Good evening and welcome to the February 9th Whatcom County Council meeting, which is now called to order. Let's please have the roll call.
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Rud Browne.
Here.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Ken Mann.
Here.
Satpal Sidhu.
Here.
Carl Weimer.
Here. Would you please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have an announcement that Councilmember Browne would like to make.
I trust that most people by now know that with deep regret we lost Harriet Spinell recently, and I'd like to say that personally Harriet was a dear friend to me and a great mentor, and I think an excellent member of the community. For those that may not be aware, there will be a service for her at this Saturday at 10 a.m. and I'm just slipped as to where it is. At Assumption Church. So, and I don't know if it would be appropriate to have a moment of silence.
Yeah, let's observe a moment of silence. Okay, other announcements are, if you have your cell phone with you, please turn it off or to vibrate. We'd appreciate that. If you are handing out paperwork to council members, please give one copy to the clerk for our office files. From earlier, from Committee of the Whole, we had a briefing, discussion, and preliminary council direction on urban growth areas, which are addressed in the Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 2, Land Use. And we also had a short presentation by one of the members of the Sudden Valley Community Association. We did decide to go with a preliminary approval of some of the data that was in the UGAs. We went with our staff's recommendation for the Bellingham UGA, and we went with the Planning Commission's findings on all the other UGAs. So, Preliminarily, yes. We won't make any final votes until June. Okay, public hearing. Audience members who signed up at the back of the room prior to the beginning of our meeting will be called first and are asked to form a line behind the signs on either side of the chambers. If you're unable to sign up before the meeting, you will be given an opportunity to speak at the end. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of time limits and let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and they'll also let you know when to wrap up when your time is through. When a large group of individuals support the same position on an issue, we do encourage you select 1 or 2 representatives to speak on behalf of the entire group. So our first public hearing is a resolution adopting the 2016 Comprehensive Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. Do we have any kind of a staff report that you want to give, Mike?
Mike McFarland, Whatcom County Parks and Recreation. The 2016 plan is really the plan that was completed at the end of 2014. We held it as we were going through with the county's comprehensive plan because some of the goals, objectives, and policies in that were being looked at both by the Park Commission as well as staff. What we did was we updated that section of the plan. We also brought the statistics in that up to date through the end of 2015 on there, and there were a few last-minute projects and adjustments that we had made on there. The comp plan is a requirement of the Recreation and Conservation Office. It is a 6-year shelf life, at which time it needs to be renewed. That plan is sent down, and what it does is it makes us eligible for certain grant programs that are out there. It also helps inform the county's comprehensive plan. We are being asked, or we are asking the council to adopt this as a departmental planning document. This is the same as the 2008 Comprehensive Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan was adopted. The reason for that is it gives us flexibility. The county's comprehensive plan, I believe, is on an 8-year cycle. The RCO's comprehensive plan is on a 6-year cycle. It also allows us to make changes and adjustments as we go through, whether it be other communities that bring projects up or funding opportunities become available, or in some instances such as purchases and acquisitions. Additionally, by not having it tied and adopted as part of the county's comprehensive plan, it also allows that flexibility to amend that plan as many times as necessary. What we did was we kind of took a step out. We looked at what the Planning Commission had sent forward on Chapter 9, which is the Recreation chapter, and we put that in the plan, even though it hasn't technically been approved by the County Council. What we can do is if there are changes that the council makes to the county's comprehensive plan, we will be back with an amendment then to the parks plan that would reflect any of those changes in there. So that's one of the things that allows us to do, is be responsive to those changes. And for those council members that were here last time when we approved the 2008 plan, you'll remember that about 4 months later we had a list of several minor amendments or adjustments that we did to that plan. That document needs to be down to the state, certified down to the state, and that for the March 1st deadline, at which time it would make us eligible for the next 6 years for grant programs. The RCO is only now accepting the Parks Comp plans. This is a requirement for not only the county but also cities as well as park districts in even numbered years. So we don't have an option. We would have to wait another 4 years before we could get, or 2 years before we could get that in there.
Ms. Brenner?
You mentioned the Planning Commission. Did this get forwarded to the Planning Commission for them to go through it at all?
We did bring it as a courtesy to the Planning Commission, but it's not necessary that the Parks Plan go to the Planning Commission.
That wasn't my question, but
Yes, it was brought to them, I believe, in 2013 as the plan was being finalized.
no, I mean like now that we're working on the comp plan, did you bring it to them during this time that they had this comp plan they were working on?
No, it's been online since then,
That's,
but
yeah.
yeah,
I just
no,
want,
it didn't go through.
okay.
Mr. Sidhu?
You said that March 1st, it has to be in the state office so to be eligible. Most of the time, like, we get 2 weeks to look at it.
Yeah.
And you had 8 years to look at it, and especially from 2013 to now, when you presented it to your department. So, like, how come we get only 15 days and all the blame, and people who work on it for a whole year, they don't hold any baggage?
Yeah, this plan was actually before the council in 2014, actually in 2015 with a work session, the document ready to go forward. At the time, the county's comprehensive plan, it was anticipated that this was going to be wrapped up this past summer. And we said we did not have any grant applications that we were filing, so we could hold that to make that change. There was also an advantage in terms of doing so for us because it extended, if we didn't have a grant application going in, it extended the life of that plan an additional 2 years. So we stretched it out. We did do a work session 2 weeks ago on the plan. The plan hasn't changed since 2014. It's been posted on our website. The revisions have been there. Copies have been provided to the council office. The work session that we had 2 weeks ago was intended if there were any additional changes that needed to go forward on that. And the plan itself has certain requirements that the state has. You'll see that right in the beginning of the document as it's laid out on there. It's actually a revision of the 2008 plan. So if you have a copy of that one, you'll see that that hasn't changed. So what we've basically done is put the dates on, updated the demographics for the county on that, and added in the goals and objectives that will be coming forward in the county's comprehensive plan.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, we received one I think only one comment about this in terms of public process. So is it being up online and it being separated, not tied to the comp plan stuff, making it more flexible and that, are we doing whatever the requirements are for public process for comment on this?
This plan has a tremendous amount of public process. You'll see there's a public survey in there. We had 10 meetings out in the communities with the public to help put the plan together. We had a meeting specifically set aside for all of our stakeholders, user groups, and so forth. There has been several work sessions with the council, public work sessions there. We solicited, it's been online, so comments on that at any time could have also been sent in. We also did, for the first time, an online survey to solicit comments and feedback on the plan, as well as allowing folks to participate in the survey online. So you'll see in the appendix that, in fact, those are broken down with all the comments and that. Additionally, generally as we go through the various agencies and that are out there, we'll also feed into the plan itself. We occasionally get their plans for review and vice versa if there's changes. We also had feedback from the park districts out there who also have their own plans, but they want to network often with the county's plan to basically make it easier and to gain some additional points when applying for a grant on there. So it's a very public process. There are recommendations in terms of the amount of public process, but we went, I think, and we always have gone above and beyond what the minimum requirements were on that. The only thing that we did this time was the number of public surveys that we did, the random surveys. That number was reduced. It's still statistically viable, but and we found basically the same thing that we had in 2008 in terms of what the trends in that were. But we had a limited budget, very limited budget on that. So.
But there were ample opportunities for people to comment on the plan.
There were. It was basically held open through the process, and then in addition, it was a standing item on the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, so the public could comment on that. And there were sections that we had comments on the the recreational resource management areas that were in some of the forest lands. There were, the commission itself had a number of meetings in collaboration with Planning Development Services staff in terms of working that through, and there was public attendance at those as well.
Mr. Sidhu?
I think what Mr. Donovan is referring to is a letter from Jack Petrie. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
So can you respond to that letter? Like, we are not that knowledgeable. You have given your part of public process. We totally understand that. It was open for people to comment online, everything. But that gentleman has written some specific things. We are not aware of that. We can't go back 10 years of history and everything. You've been there for a long time, and you understand the process much better than us. Can you enlighten us what is the substance of Mr. Petrie's comments, or it is totally irrelevant?
The comments, the letter and the comment that was submitted talks about this being an amendment to the county's comprehensive plan. We are not asking for this to be an amendment to the county's comprehensive plan or to be adopted as part of the county's comprehensive plan. It is being asked to be adopted as a departmental planning document, which is a different path. If it's an amendment or being adopted as part of the county's comprehensive plan, there is a different process that goes through both in terms of being docketed as well as going through the Planning Commission and that particular process. That is not the route that we are asking for this to go through. This was not the route that the 2008 plan went through on that. His references to the parks plan is very specific in there, and it talks about the 1989 Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted when I believe in 1993, I think the comp plan was somewhere in there. And then that particular plan was no longer valid at the end of 1994.
Is it possible for the record if you can reply to that letter? It means to the council that this is your outputs are, or your answers are to those. There are several different points in there. And it's about the process. He's really very particular about the process, which is, he's raising some questions. I don't know those questions. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know what is right or wrong. But if you put something as an answer, then it will become part of the record.
Well,
So-
this is part of the record. I mean,
Yes.
that was, my point is to get this into the record
We
right now.
should
So.
actually probably do some of this after the open.
Okay.
Because
Okay, sorry.
I want to talk to what you're talking about, but I don't
Okay.
want to do it
Yeah,
till.
and a quick response
This
is
is a
that
hearing. and we
Planning and
do go
Development
by the
Services
rules.
has responded to that element because that is part, his references and where's how the comprehensive plan functions with an amendment there, and they did provide a response to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we open the hearing? Seeing none, we shall open the public hearing. We have three people signed up: Linda Twitchell, Patrick L.L.C, and Wendy Harris.
Said it right.
I'm back. Linda Twitchell with the Building Industry Association. I do have concerns about the public process because, correct me if I'm wrong, but when this came before the council a year or two ago, I recall council saying you need to get more recent public input on this. Take it away, work on it, we'll deal with it when we come back with a comp plan. And basically, yes, it may have been online, but it's been on a shelf. I am somewhat aware it goes on with government and had no idea this was coming out until a week and a half ago. So I would suspect, particularly if there are only 3 people here for your hearing, that other folks might be in a similar position. Okay, everything in here regarding public process is dated 2013. Let me just note for the record that on page, if I have my glasses, 6, the population projections are wrong for 2015 and don't match your proposed allocation for 2036, so that's something you might want to deal with. My main concern with this plan, everybody likes parks. My family has been a big park supporter all these years, But I am also in a position now where I am aware of a percolating emergency in Whatcom County regarding the affordability of housing. And I don't mean subsidized housing, I'm talking about housing people can afford. Low-income people are having problems. Middle-income people have been officially identified by Bellingham as a group now that needs help. And yet we have a parks plan where if you look on page 62, back here under financing strategies, the first 3 strategies, one that is repeated throughout the plan is advice to county council to implement impact fees, which this council has determined in the past are not appropriate for our tax base. Impact fees, for those who don't know, are fees you pay when you build a house. The second financing strategy mentioned here is to create a third REIT, a real estate excise tax, over and above the 2 we already have. Again, this would be to raise money for more parkland or for better parks, and in the process raise the cost of housing even higher than it is. The third proposition here that I doubt voters would go for, but the suggestion is that on page 62, or maybe it's on 63, that voters be asked to rescind the 1% maximum increase on property taxes so we can raise property taxes again to raise more money for parks or better parks.
30 seconds, please.
We have 16,000 acres of parkland. We have the 4th highest housing prices in the state, according to the University of Washington, 2nd year in a row. We have only the 13th out of 39 in terms of median income. I am concerned we are reaching a point where the people who work here are not going to be able to afford to live here. And when I see a parks plan, I ask you to please look at level of service because it seems a bit misconstrued to me that we would raise
Time.
fees and taxes on housing to come up with even more parkland and more park development, considering what we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down, Patrick.
Patrick L.L.C., 4825 Alderson Road. I came down here as a courtesy to Harris, who can come in and take everything I say apart. But, you know, I spend a lot of time talking to people who show up in Bellingham and show up in the county, and I like to find out why they come here. They come here, they like it. They like the open spaces, they like the fresh air. Usually they have a skill that we can use in the area, or some business shows up here because they want to have their software skills. People come to Whatcom County, and I tell them, good, enjoy it. You know, you're going to pay more for your taxes, you pay more for your house, and you don't get that much out of your job, but some of the enjoyment you get out of your job is from the environment. And that's where the parks come in. I'm quite willing to support parks. I think they're a really good idea. I'll talk a little later about housing that's affordable. So be ready for that one. Thanks.
Wendy Harris. I'm here because I don't support the plan that's been put forward. I want to make it clear, I do support parks. That's not the issue. There's procedural issues and there's substantive problems that I'm struggling with. It seems like every year we're back to where we are today, which is we get this plan and, oh, we got a deadline and we have hardly any time to look and it's going to expire before we can get it in and get our grant money. And I didn't know this was coming up, or I would have looked at it closer. It looks like a lot of other people are in that place. I'm also concerned when I start hearing words like flexibility, we need more flexibility. To me, that's a code for, the flip side of that is that also means less accountability and less transparency to the public. So I really would like you to pay attention when someone says flexibility. The idea that we have these two separate plans, it's a mess. It makes things complicated for me. Most jurisdictions don't do that. We should just have, you know, one document that's the same instead of having to look at this plan here and then what's in the comp plan. I'm also concerned about some of the more substantive procedures. Wildlife habitat. This county, under this administration, has done an extremely poor job of protecting wildlife. And that is one of the primary reasons that we have parks. It's not just for people, it's for our wildlife and for our biodiversity. But if you look at that plan, it's only talking about trails. That's all we get now is trails, trails, trails. If you go to the end of that chapter and it'll list out what the projects are, show me where there's something in there that's setting aside land just for habitat and just for wildlife. It's not there. It never has been. And it couldn't be because they don't even know what wildlife is there. So, you know, another big problem I have is they haven't done the assessment and the analysis that's necessary. They're talking about putting in these big trails. Was it Beta Baker or something they wanted to add, and going all the way up to Mount Baker? We don't know if those trails are going to be crossing an important migration corridor, if it's in sensitive areas. And some of these policies are just awful.
30 seconds, please.
I was looking for the, under wildlife habitat, it said preserve sensitive habitat sites to support threatened species and urban wildlife. That definition lets a lot of species through. That's the first thing. But for natural areas underneath it, it said provide public access to sensitive environments for you know, public viewing. So you can't put people in the same place you're trying to protect wildlife. It's just a conflicting use. What you need to do is you need to establish buffers that adequately separate people from animals. And if we don't know what animals are there, we can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down, Carol.
Carol Perry, Whatcom County. Thank you, Councilman Donovan and Sidhu, for asking questions. for all of us. I happened to be at the commission meeting in 2013, I think it was, when the level of service was discussed about parks. The meeting went on for a long time. The commission went through every park one by one and asked Mr. McFarland, is this park being used? Is this park developed? Is this park? One by one, very, very carefully. And it was eye-opening. It's been so long ago, I can't remember the numbers. I usually try to remember numbers, but it was into the hundreds of acres, parks that hadn't been developed for one reason or another. And there's, there's times when things don't get done. But 2 weeks ago, well, it was hundreds of acres anyway, and it was all about level of service. And then I think the level of service was just gotten rid of because it was in the way. And it was established that we have more parks than King County, any other county. I can't remember. I don't want to say things that aren't true, but we are over the top as far as parks. And then 2 weeks ago when we came and this plan was being presented, we tried to get a copy here so that we could look through it, and it wasn't available. And so I agree with whoever wrote in, it wasn't me, that this hasn't had enough time. And I think it's kind of ironic, as I watched you today struggle through all of those chapters of the comprehensive plan. I felt pretty good when I saw that you were confused, because I sat through a lot of sessions and I can't understand this process. I don't know who it benefits. But anyway, getting back to the parks. We need, it's like in a household. You have
30
to have
seconds,
priorities.
please.
If you don't have a jail, all today should have been about getting a jail. I think of the old Wild West. What was the first thing that people needed when they settled in a town? They needed law and order. If we have a crisis and we don't have, well, and that's another subject, sorry. I just wanted to speak about the parks. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak about parks? Come on down. So.
I want to talk about the comprehensive plan.
This is a public hearing for the parks, open space. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the council? Mr. Weimer.
I'd move approval.
I have a
Question.
Why hadn't we end up?
We have a second first.
I'll second it, so we got
Okay,
discussion.
Mr. Mann.
Ms. Brenner was ahead of me.
I was. Touche. Okay. I'm pretty amazed at, well, what everybody said, but I have to single out Wendy. I wrote down that word flexibility, and the other one was last minute changes and transparency, lack of. Yeah, you can't read, oh, maybe you can read it. Anyway, I was just amazed. This whole attitude that we get it in at the last minute on the agenda and then hurry up and get it done because it's got to be in by a certain time or we lose potential funding. I mean, absolutely, I don't think we should pass this. I mean, I really think it should not only go to the Planning Commission for their input, but it should, I don't like the separate plans, and they both say comprehensive. It is so confusing. All these years I've been on the council, this is the most confusing to me. I think that Mr. McFarland probably believes exactly what he said. I don't agree with him. I absolutely don't agree. And there was no need for us, if we had to get this in by March, there was absolutely, even if you believe there needs to be a separate parks plan on top of the one in the comprehensive plan, even if you believe that, if somebody had a March deadline on something that is pretty important to a lot of people. To bring it forward this way at the last minute and do this, I not only can I not support it, the attitude of, well, we've got it online and we've got it, and we had meetings. Well, I didn't know about all the meetings, and I have trouble getting on the council website and finding anything online, even though I know it's there. I still have trouble finding it. So to assume that people will just go online and spend hours and hours and hours going through all of our stuff is, I think it's inappropriate, and I don't think it's in the public interest. I just not only don't think we should go through with it tonight, I don't think this should be done separate from our comp plan.
Mr. Mann?
So in our agenda, it says approval of this item is scheduled for February 23rd. Is that, what is?
Because they got to get it in by March 9th or something. Something in March.
Well, I thought it means approval by us, and yet we have a motion on the floor now to approve it. So I'm just curious why that February 23rd date was on there.
I'm not sure, but it was requested that we wait for 2 weeks prior to approval.
Okay, so then maybe Mr. McFarland can enlighten us.
We were waiting for all the SEPA comments to come through,
Oh, okay.
because we had to do SEPA.
So you don't want us to
this
recommend
is-
approval tonight, or approve it tonight anyway?
Correct. This was a public hearing, and then the resolution will be before the council on the 23rd.
So what if, we've had some good comments from the public tonight. I mean, the process comments are different. I meant like actual comments on the plan, but can we make changes in the next 2 weeks and at our next meeting?
Yes, you can. I mean, the plan itself can be amended any time. When I say last-minute changes, we did not have the planning commission. They had not made decisions in terms of what they were doing on Chapter 9, I believe, until November. It was pretty late in terms of getting those in there, and we wanted to include, that was a request of the council last time we did the plan, when we started on the work session. On this particular plan, was there seemed to be a disconnect between the county's comprehensive plan, the goals and objectives, and what we had in the parks plan. We said we will take the Chapter 9 goals and objectives and put those in there so that you can read the county's comprehensive goals and objectives, and it just flows into the park and recreation policies and procedures and projects and that, which is what we did. So that was really what we were waiting for, was to have that done. When we said, we said, okay, we're not going to move the plan through, when we had it all set to go in 14, the reason we didn't was because we were working on the comprehensive plan. We said, well, if there's going to be the update to Chapter 9 in recreation, then let's try to get that in this particular plan. The county's comprehensive plan is, again, behind schedule. We have a deadline on ours in order to apply for funding, but there isn't a whole bunch of things that were thrown in at the last minute on that, except waiting for the Planning Commission, and this council, I believe, has not had a chance to go through Chapter 9 of the county's comprehensive plan, which is why, you know, it would have been nice to have had that done beforehand, but, you know, it's a different process. It takes longer. It's much more thorough, and that's the way it works. You know, so, I mean, I can't, you know, we don't control the county's comprehensive plan in that particular schedule. This is the one we have, and, you know, the plan has been essentially complete, sitting there for a while, waiting for the comprehensive plan to be updated.
Mr. Browne?
Mr. Mann made my point.
Oh, okay. Ms. Brenner?
You know, it sounds great what you say. It just doesn't sound like it's a public-friendly process at all. And I'm not comfortable with it, but I just, you know, I'm sure there are ways to get around things and make things different, but this does need to be different. We are up to our eyeballs in comprehensive plan right now. And you can tell me, well, you had this before us at some point. I don't even remember. I'm so, you know, overloaded with park stuff in the comp plan and everything else in the comp plan. And it's not my job to just trust you guys and go ahead with it because we have a deadline. And I guess that's what bothers me most of all. Even if we were going to do these separate, there had to be a way that would have given us months and months and months to work on this stuff since it's separate, before you come so close to this deadline. And you're telling me that if we don't make this deadline, we can't apply for any funds for, what is it, 6 years?
There's certain programs that we can't apply for funding on.
For 6 years?
No, for 2 years. You have to, in even numbered years, you can apply.
Oh, the biennial stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's still, 2 years is 2 years, and I just hope, however council members vote, you don't vote because for it because you feel like we got to make this deadline. I'm not going to support it, but I hope you guys don't use, that's not your excuse for doing it.
Mr. Donovan.
But I think, as I said, my understanding is we wouldn't have to vote on it until the 23rd or whatever. But I do recall Mr. McFarland being here previously and talking about the surveys that have been done and public input on this. And maybe that had been done not much since 2013, but the document really hasn't changed since 2013, right?
That is correct. I mean, this was positioned to move forward, and this is what we heard last time we were here. We were in the process of updating the comprehensive plan, so let's wait on this. At the time, it made sense because we didn't have any grant applications that we were planning on making in those particular programs, so we did. We set it aside there. It wasn't that there wasn't public process. You can look in the document and see there's a tremendous amount of public process, including all the comments and all the surveys that are in the back of that particular document there.
I think I'll just, echo Councilmember Brenner. We have so many things going on at the same time. It's hard to kind of get them all lined up and keep track of stuff.
Mr. Weimer?
I just wanted to withdraw my motion since we're not supposed to be passing this evening, and I also want to speak in favor of the plan and just, you know, I've seen this plan multiple times over the last couple of years. It was in front of the Planning Commission to some degree recently because they had originally, as they looked at the recreation chapter, removed some of the trail stuff, and that caused somewhat of an uproar, and a lot of people came to the Planning Commission and talked to them about the trails that are included in the plan and what all that means, and they ended up adding the trails stuff back into the comprehensive plan. You know, this was on our agenda, posted publicly middle of January, so it's 6 weeks before we actually have to pass this. So it's not a brand new thing that's sprung on us. You know, the people, us that have been sitting here, have seen this plan a couple of times previously. Certainly the public, most of the public input was a while ago, but it hasn't changed that much.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn. Mr. Sidhu.
I just have a suggestion. What you just said is that there is a deadline and we need to pass it. But this plan can be changed at any time and as many times we want to.
That is correct, and that's what we.
So taking it further, if we pass it, you meet your deadline of March 1st, you submit it. But can we say that before we pass the comprehensive plan, June 30th, that you can take new input from public for the next 4 or 5 months and bring it back? And if we don't have to change anything, then it just stays that way, but at least give the opportunity for public to comment and council to look at it in 5 months.
As the document, it can be changed anytime, so yes, and that is one of the things that we noted was that because if this council makes changes to Chapter 9 in the comprehensive plan, we would like to capture that in the plan, so that will come back then as an amendment for approval before the council here.
So that's what I see, that we can do both.
Yes.
Pass it as well as have a comment, public comment, newer comments in next 5 months, and revisit it again if it needs to, if there is a requirement from the public to revisit it.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, it seems weird that we could get funding for something that might not be what we're getting funding for. So it may come, one of two things will happen. Either we're stuck with what we got the funding for, or there's a big push not to change anything.
Funding is just the eligibility, that if we submit the plan, we as a county are eligible to apply for grants if they happen to be. We don't even know what grant's going to come up in the next biennium. Isn't it true?
Well, we actually do, and those
Okay,
grant
but
applications
there's
and
more to
requests
it.
will all come before this council for approval. To give you an idea, just a very quick idea, what we have out there, we already purchased the property up at Birch Bay for the community park. We will be applying for grant funding, which this is a part of the requirement for, to try to recover up to $1 million or $1.5 million in grant funds for that project, which we've already committed. We're overmatched on that. We've committed to looking at grant funding for out at South Fork Community Park, as we did that in the last capital improvement plan. So there's some funding that we would like to acquire there. We have trails funding. So there are several projects that we have out there right now that we would like to make application for, but those applications, when we apply for the grants, you know, those agreements and contracts, again, the council gets to approve those. But this is to make us eligible, the grants come through. So we know very specifically what we're applying for. They just don't give us money. We need to actually go and make a very specific request for a project.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, can't we just do that without having to pass this plan by whatever it is, the date?
No, the plan makes you eligible for that period, so they award these grants every 2 years.
So you're saying other counties, because Wendy mentioned that, I think, that there are other counties who don't do separate.
There are some counties, and we did back in '89 where we had it tied to the comprehensive plan. It was adopted as part of it. But you still have to, every 6 years, you still have to update it. Now, if you were going to update it, if this were part of the county's comprehensive plan, then you would have to docket it, and you would have to go through that process with the planning commission and that to make those changes. Having it separated out as a separate document, then you can amend it and make those changes anytime. But you still have to have a valid plan for that 6-year period. This will get us through basically 2, maybe 3 grant cycles.
So we already passed those proposals that we want to have them done. We did agree with those. I know the Birch Bay one we did and some of the others. You're saying unless it's done this specific way and asked for, because I'm getting real confused about this. We apply for grants all the time when we've got a project we want to do.
Right, but on the recreational grants, there's certain programs that we have to retain eligibility for. When the county had to move ahead and when we purchased the Birch Bay property, I sent in a letter of retroactivity, what was basically doing, the state approved saying, yes, you have to buy it now or you lose it.
Yeah.
We give you permission, but when the grant funding cycle comes up, that makes you, we'll allow you to apply for that even though you've already purchased it. Usually you can't, if you built something prior, you can't get grant funding for it. On land acquisition, occasionally you can get a letter of retroactivity that allows you to acquire the property and then at a later date apply for the grant funding.
So we have a plan that's already existing. What if we don't adopt anything new because I want to do something new and just leave it as it is and request those grant funds?
You won't get them because this is a requirement of that. You have to have this plan. You have to have a comprehensive parks, recreation, open space plan. And I do agree it's confusing. I had that conversation with the state saying, do we have to call it a comprehensive parks, recreation, open space plan? Because that's what the state calls it. They said, you probably don't. I mean, we can drop comprehensive off and just have it as a county parks and recreation open space plan, but we still need to have that plan, a valid plan, in order to apply for the grant funding.
And go ahead.
I think the clarity is this plan becomes ineligible after every 6 years, and that's the anniversary you're falling on, the 6-year anniversary? That has to be approved?
It actually, it expired 2 years ago, that cycle.
Okay.
Which is why we were ready to go, but we did not have any grant applications that we were going to make at that time. So we said, okay, we have the plan, we paid the consultants, we did the surveys, we went through the process, we can keep this plan, we can update the data and the information in there. And you know, the point that one of the speakers brought up was of the population projections. Well, we used the state projections because at the time we were updating this plan, we didn't have those determinations by the council in terms of what those levels are. That can be easily amended in the plan. You know, I wouldn't suggest a separate one, or maybe we can quick change that before next week.
Like, I don't see any problem with approving it as long as we have the ability to change it anytime, or like I said, if we can get new public input, if you agree with that, and then we can wait 5-6 months, and if there's any input, we will act on that. If none, then we can pass it now before the deadline.
That's entirely the
I mean, that's
prerogative of the
my
council.
take on this is.
Ms. Brenner?
So you're saying that if King County, I think it was, she mentioned 2 counties, I can't remember which ones, but if those counties, and they were not little counties, at least one of them wasn't, if those counties wanted to be able to apply for this kind of grant and hadn't done a plan update in a year or 2, and they passed something to like the Birch Bay one, we did that a long time ago. It wasn't just like a few months, a month, it wasn't last summer, or?
We closed on that at the end of 14.
Yeah, so that was like a year ago. So if these other counties are closing on things, and what do they submit?
They will all be applying, if they have a valid plan, they will also be applying if they've gotten letters of retroactivity for acquisition funding. I mean, this is only one program. There's also development for playgrounds and trails and beaches and everything else that are in there, but that just happens to be one that we're positioned right now to make an application for.
So why didn't we already have in our separate plan that things are retroactive and stick them in as we purchase them? Rather than.
I don't understand the question on here, because the retroactivity has to do with a state approval to allow us to make a grant application after we acquired it. It has nothing to do with what we do in our plan.
So we could do it, there's got to be a way we could do it without passing this, that we, maybe it's too late because we got this deadline, and that's what really bothers me. If we closed on something last year, or it's been over a year, if we closed on something last year, why couldn't we have retroactively, every time we close on a piece of property that we want to have in our parks plan, why can't we just add it then as an amendment instead of doing this whole, going through this whole parks plan thing? Why isn't there an automatic way?
Well,
I mean, isn't there a way to do an automatic retroactive thing?
We did add it in our plan at the time because we were in the process of making the acquisition, which is the plan that needs to be approved. So it is in that particular plan.
You added it, but we didn't add it.
No, we didn't make application for the grant funding because the grants, we didn't have a grant cycle we could apply for.
Mr. Weimer?
I think we're confusing a couple of things. I think you can ask to retroactively fund things if you're already eligible, but you can't retroactively ask to be eligible. So by passing this plan, we become eligible, and then if we buy something during that period, we could perhaps retroactively ask for the funding for it. Is that correct, Mr. McFarland?
We have to be eligible at the time we make the
Exactly.
request.
Right, you can't retroactively ask for eligibility, which is what passing the plan gets you.
But we didn't.
No, the plan doesn't get us the retroactivity.
No.
What the plan does is allows us now to submit the grant application.
Eligibility, that's
What the
right.
state said, that we already got permission from the state saying,
Right.
yes, you can apply for a grant retroactive.
Yeah.
That we have.
Right, but I thought Ms. Brenner is thinking that we can go about our merry way and then ask for eligibility retroactively that we
No.
passed a plan.
No,
Okay,
I-
I'm confused too then.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
No.
We're all confused.
I know, it's,
I still like it.
Well, luckily,
Well,
we've
you
got,
like it,
we've got
so.
2 weeks until we're supposed to actually vote on it, so
Correct.
why don't we put an end to this
Sleep on it.
conversation?
sleep on it.
2 weeks.
Okay, I think everyone's in agreement with
No
Councilmember Mann.
Second that motion.
I'm going to backtrack because I skipped over the minutes. So we have seven sets of minutes to approve. It's the surface water work session for September 22nd, regular county council for September 29th, the Board of Health for October 6th, surface water work session for October 20th, special committee of the whole for October 27th, regular county council for October 27th, and regular county council for November 24th. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. I make a motion. Or whatever, how we're supposed to say it now, that new way we're supposed to say it.
Do we have a
I
second?
do it.
Are you moving to approve?
I move to approve.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Excuse me, I got a frog.
The
Any
process
discussion?
changed on how we can even move things anymore. Go ahead.
Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes
Abstain.
6-0. Unless you want to vote.
I wasn't
Oh,
born
you
yet.
did vote on the way in. Okay. Passes unanimously.
No, I abstained. I wasn't here
He
yet.
wasn't at.
Oh, you were
some of
abstaining.
that stuff.
Okay. One abstention. Councilmember
I
Donovan.
wasn't at any of those meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, our next public hearing is an ordinance regarding temporary installation of stop signs on North Lake Samish Road, number 107. Do we have any kind of a staff report, Mr.?
We do. John Hutchings, Public Works, and this evening we are looking for approval to address a weight limit issue on the Lake Samish Bridge. And the proposed solution for this involves controlling traffic at both sides of the bridge and operating the bridge as a one-lane facility until we can secure the appropriate funding to put forward a bridge replacement project. And here to talk about some of the details of that is James Lee, our bridge program manager.
Good evening, Council. Yes, James Lee, Public Works Engineering. I'm just going to provide kind of a brief summary of how we've gotten to where we are today with the Lake Samish Bridge 107. And feel free to jump in if you have any questions as I'm working through this. So this started last year. We performed our routine bridge inspection of this timber bridge structure, and we identified some rot in the top of the glue lam girders. So as is standard practice, that caused us to go back and take a look at the load rating for that bridge to determine the safe and legal loads that bridge could carry. When we did that, one other factor came into play, and that was the fact that the American Institute of Timber Construction back in 2007 released a memo and guidance stating that the allowable stresses for these types of girders had been overestimated, and we had to reduce the allowable strength of those girders by 25% when calculating the new load rating. So those factors combined to take a bridge that was currently carrying legal loads and reduced it pretty severely. So once we saw the severe reduction in those loads, we decided to huddle up with our structural engineer, look at some different options to deal with this load restriction, and at the same time we also reached out to the South Whatcom Fire Authority to get a handle on the types of water tenders and fire engines that they run across that bridge for fire response. Reached out to Bellingham School District to get some information on the buses. And ultimately, as a result of that work, came up with the three options that we identified in this Bridge 107 update we provided. Going through these and looking at the pros and the cons, the costs, one of the factors that we considered here was how to best position the county going forward to apply for federal bridge replacement funds. And by doing this interim measure of this channel modification across the center span of this bridge structure, we feel we've got a cost-effective solution that positions us well to go after future funding. We also had a good meeting, myself and our project engineer had a good meeting with a couple of folks from the Lake Samish Association last week, got some good feedback from them. We've also coordinated and been in some conversations with county parks, because obviously the Lake Samish Park is in close proximity to the bridge. So we've done some outreach out there to some of the to the stakeholders that will be involved. I do want to highlight that this recommendation tonight deals with the immediate issues in front of us regarding the load restrictions, but we do, in our annual construction program and 6-year transportation plan, we have budgeted money this year to start work on a type, size, and location analysis and start moving towards a replacement of that existing bridge. So that's going to be happening on a parallel track, you know, as we're also dealing with this load restriction. So that's the quick update I had. Happy to answer any questions if there's any.
Mr. Weimer.
I meant to look this up and I didn't, but I had a memory that there's a pipeline attached to the underside of that bridge. Is that true?
There's a couple, yeah. One of them is the Lake Samish Water Association's line, and then I believe the other is just a conduit, a utility conduit.
Okay, I was thinking the Olympic pipeline goes right through there someplace, but I can't remember if it's attached to that bridge or not.
I think that's on the other side of the freeway.
Yeah, I think that's on the east side of the freeway. There's not that I'm aware of, there's not a natural gas line hanging from that bridge currently.
We're talking about a hazardous liquid line. The gas line's on the east side of the freeway.
Is there a liquid gas line?
I don't know if it's attached to the bridge, but it goes right through there someplace.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's something that we definitely, as we start to look towards a replacement, that's something that we'll, you know, we obviously would be coordinating on to address as a part of that larger replacement project.
They may have deeper pockets than we do.
Of
Yes.
course.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing. We have 4 people signed up. We have Donald Goodman, Peter Holcomb, Jerry Johnson, and Becky O'Brien Wilson.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Don Goodman. My wife and I reside at Lake Samish. I have just a couple of comments about the ordinance itself as it's written, because it actually does a couple of things. The first is it establishes the single lane setup on the bridge, which I don't refute at all. I mean, I'm not going to question the science around that requirement. My concern is with respect to the way the ordinance is written. It seems to preclude the possibility of repairing the bridge. The bridge has been there for 50-plus years. It's served the community, commercial interests, recreationalists well. The issue appears to be, the primary issue is talking to James Lee and his colleagues, appears to be with the center section, which is not as robust as the approaches. And so the bridge is 250 feet long, the center section is 50 feet. The approaches are 100 feet each, and if you look at it, you can see that they're manufactured and put together quite differently. The way the ordinance is written is on lines 23 and 24, it says, be it further ordained that when the construction of the North Lake Sammamish Road Bridge number 107 replacement is completed, the stop signs will be removed. Clearly, I don't refute the requirement for one lane. It's going to be an inconvenience. It's going to be an issue as long as it's there for the residents, for recreationists, for commercial traffic. So I wonder, and I think, according to the Public Works estimates, for something in the range and order of less than $500,000, it may be possible in 12 weeks of disruption at some time in the future, it may be possible to repair this bridge. In the meantime, I think if this ordinance is passed as it's written exclusively, it might preclude that opportunity to consider repairing the bridge. I think maybe a little bit of TLC might get another, who knows, 20, 25 years out of this bridge, and monies, people's monies that could be used elsewhere for a replacement bridge or other requirements maybe used better elsewhere.
30
So-
seconds, please.
I would respectfully request a change in the wording, which I have a copy of. Specifically, I would suggest it say, be further ordained that when the repair or replacement of the North Lake Sandwich Road Bridge number 107 is completed, the stop signs will be removed. Copy. May I approach the bench?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you again.
I'm interested in hearing from James on that.
Peter Holcomb.
Oh, could we just, before the next person comes up, could we just maybe get a response from James Lee on it?
I think Public
Interesting.
Works would be fine with that change. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't see your head nod. Perfect. He was thinking maybe it could be repaired instead of replaced, and I hadn't thought of it that way. Thought you said the standards had changed. So.
Well, the only comment I'll make on that is that what we're proposing here is not mutually exclusive to the other options we've identified. So I just wanted to make that comment. If we implement this now and for whatever reason we need to change direction in the future, this wouldn't preclude us from pursuing those other options. I think we'd want to look closely at the funding and how that might be impacted going forward, but in terms of the work, I just wanted to make that quick comment.
Okay. Peter Holcomb, Jerry Johnson. Come on.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Johnson. I live at 935 Westlake Samish, and I've lived there since 1984. I live 5 houses from the bridge, and I've just retired from Western, and so I sit in a rocking chair 8 months of the year out on my deck watching that bridge. So I know it very well. So most of my comments actually will be passed on to the engineers rather than to you, because I support the motion, with the change. There's a great number of logging trucks that carry lumber, stone, and gravel that come down Roy Road and then go across the bridge and then go up to the freeway. If there's a load restriction, they aren't going to be able to do that, which means they'll have to go down Westlake Samish and then on Nully Road, which is going to put a great wear and tear on Westlake Samish. Also, it creates some other problems because there's a very narrow and minimal edge foundation for Westlake Samish. For example, last year, a girl turned around on that road, went off into the lake. 2 years ago, somebody did the same thing and died and drowned. There's just no leeway on either side. And if the logging trucks are going there and there's lots of bikers and there's walkers, that's going to create lots of problems on Westlake Samish. Also, each summer on hot weekend days, there's a steady stream of traffic that goes to Lake Samish Park. They can't find a place to park, so they go across the bridge, they come down to my house, turn around in my driveway, go back, cross the bridge, come back. There's an average of 6+ cars going across that bridge constantly on Saturdays and Sundays. And I could give you pictures if you'd like those almost. I watch it constantly. And I'm not sure what the resolution is, because if there's a stop and go traffic there, there's going to be a long backup of traffic waiting for the one lane to go back and forth. In a similar vein, I'm not sure how the engineers can warn large motorhomes, heavy trucks, and semi-trailers that come down from their freeway off the exit, come down, they take North Lake Samish, they go across the bridge. If there's not going to be a possibility of going across because of weight constrictions, there's absolutely no way they can turn around. They're stuck right by the bridge. Long semi, what does it do? And so there's going to have to be signage all the way back up the turnoff by the station up at the top saying long trucks, whatever, heavy trucks, you're not able to go down by the bridge. And right now they currently do. Also, does the one-way traffic impact bicyclists? Or are they going to be able to go at the same time as cars? Because there are tons and tons of bicyclists. There was 55 bicyclists that went by in 1 hour this afternoon. I counted. 55 in 1 hour. Similarly, year-round groups of people travel by the lake. We have bicyclist groups. We have motorbike every Sunday afternoon. We have a motorbike group that comes by. We have car touring groups that come by. Stop-and-go traffic is going to disrupt all those tours. I know that county funding is a big issue. My fear is that one-lane adjustments will be made, and then it's going to be sat upon, not changed from that point on. And I'm now 67 years old. My fear is that when I die and my son's going to sell the property many years from now, there's still going to be a one-lane bridge there. Because this is viewed as a Band-Aid. I support the Band-Aid, but I also caution you have to get funding to pay for the replacement or the repair of the bridge.
Time.
Done. Thank you. You can come sit with me in my rocking chair and watch.
Yeah, I'll do that.
It's gonna be sunny.
Hi, I'm Becky O'Brien Wilson. I also live down at Westlake Sandwich, not far from Jerry. And Don and I had invited James Lee and Doug Rainey to come meet with us, and they kindly did, so we could show them some of our concerns. And one of them is very much the traffic congestion at the park. And this could be a great opportunity for that to be fixed because it's not going away. We have an increased population. We have, I believe, hotter summers for the rest of our lives. And it might be a great time to figure out how to create some form of turnaround at the park as opposed to having to go across the park, turn around and come back. So we've suggested that to James and Doug, that they meet with the parks people, the roads people, try to figure out a way to address what is currently a problem, keep it from becoming more of a problem, and maybe eliminate it in the future. The second issue, we had a chance to take James and Doug over to see the section of Westlake Sandwich Road that has very little road base to begin with. It's on a steep, there's a steep cliff, and it goes right down into the lake. When the road was originally made, it was a cut into the side and dirt pushed out, and the dirt basically falls into the lake over a period of time. 10, 15 years ago, a very large boulder wall was put in by the county roads to keep the road base from falling into the lake. So we were able to show them how that's gradually sinking. We also, a few years ago, had a sinkhole repaired because we get twice the rainfall of Bellingham. You might wonder why we live at Lake Samish. The water just comes off that hillside, washes right under the road base, creates things like sinkholes. So our concern with additional logging trucks and the gravel trucks from the quarry is that it will further damage that road base, and you could end up with a major road repair as a result of them not being able to go across the bridge. So we've talked to James and Doug, we've expressed those concerns. We'd like to prevent problems instead of having to deal with them after the fact. We are concerned that if there isn't federal money, and we're not quite sure what that wait time is to figure out if there's federal money, but that we at least get some sense that if there's no federal money, we'll get bumped to the top of some list to get a repair done because, as Jerry says, we don't want to be forgotten out at Lake Samish. You all come down this summer. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to talk about stop signs on a bridge? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Does staff want to comment on any of the testimony we heard?
Well, I think my only comment would be that we have certainly heard the concerns of the community members and are committed to engaging them in viable solutions to these problems before we act out there and tie their neighborhood up in a knot. I can't promise that we'll be able to resolve every problem, but the bottom line is that what we're looking for is a community solution to this traffic situation that will indeed develop as the summer comes on. There's no question that this one-lane closure will put a snarl into the movement of traffic across the bridge and down the road. There, of course, as James mentioned, there are certainly other alternatives. They are more expensive in terms of interim repairs, and they they affect our ability to bring in outside money to ultimately provide a long-term fix for this particular bridge that has been on our bridge program list as needing attention for a long time. So at some point, the county is going to have to invest in a new bridge out there. The question really is whether we do this completely on our own dime, whether we try and get another 10, 15 years out of it, or we deal with the problem now that it has presented itself. So we certainly can have more conversations about that. Obviously, as James mentioned, the remedy for this is still yet to be resolved, and that will involve a lot of conversation with you all before we get to that point.
Thank you, Director Hutchings. Ms. Brenner.
Yeah, I'm still supportive, but having it more visualized by the people who live there makes me wonder now too, what do you do with these big trucks and the stops? I know how busy that gets in the summer.
Yes.
And I hadn't even thought of it.
So signage at the entrance to the turn down to the road.
Up by the freeway?
Yeah, up by the freeway. I mean, making sure that, that trucks recognize that it's not a truck route, that there's a detour for trucks, and those sorts of approaches to managing the traffic down there will certainly be necessary.
Well, I mean, would you guys consider something like not only putting the signage up there, but having it be real clear, like road restricted way, rather
Yes.
than just, that there's going to be something happen up there?
Yeah, just to make sure that people know that there's a one-lane bridge ahead.
Well, not just the
And-
one lane, but the load restriction, because then if I'm on one of those big
Yeah,
trucks
yeah.
and I see load restriction, I'm not going to go that way anyway.
Absolutely.
So maybe that would help. I don't know.
No, I think those are appropriate ideas. And
Councilmember Mann.
So just some clarity, if we could get it. We're doing this, the signage, as a very temporary stopgap measure to make sure the bridge doesn't fail when someone's going over it. So I get why we have to do that. What's the timeline for actually, and a few other people asked this, what's the timeline for actually figuring out if there's other funding available? When will we know that, and what should we be penciling in as possible dates for all of this?
Yeah, and that's a good question, James Lee, Public Works Engineering. So we were just informed that the next call for BRAC funds, Federal Bridge Replacement Funds, is going to be in the spring of 2018. Whoa. So currently our plan would have kind of two prongs. One would be what we're talking about tonight to deal with the load restrictive issue. Then, as the director mentioned, we've budgeted and planned funds to start the engineering work to get the design going for a replacement. I think ideally what we would like to do is utilize local funds, get that design complete by the time we would apply for the BRAC funds. Then when we apply for those BRAC funds, we have a project, we know the cost. It really helps to make for a robust funding application at that point that I think would compete well. Are we guaranteed of the funds? No. The BRAC funds, it's a competitive process, but I think it would, again, put us in good position to pursue those funds.
So then, under that course of action, we're talking about a minimum 2, 3, 4 years, right?
You'd be looking at a minimum of a few years, yeah.
Okay. And if we did one of these repair strategies for $250,000, that would take approximately 12 weeks to implement?
We were estimating that, do some design work, a little bit of permitting, material procurement. So yeah, there would be some lead time running up to implementing one of those first two options.
So and maybe you mentioned this before, but is going with the signage strategy, does that mean we're just going, I think you said it's not mutually exclusive, or it doesn't foreclose on any of these other options. Like, could we do one of these $250,000 or $450,000 repairs this summer or this year?
Well, I'll speak from just the actual act of implementing that kind of work. Yeah, that's a project that could be put together without too much difficulty. The permitting on it wouldn't be overly burdensome, I don't think. There'd be a little bit of design to do, some permitting, but it's a project that could be implemented, I think, relatively close to the timeline outlined there.
So, but you're not asking for that authority at this time? You're just asking for the stop sign authority?
Correct.
That's correct.
So when will you or we be asked to make a decision on the larger picture, whether we just want to wait till 2018 or whether we want to do one of these repair strategies sooner?
Well, I think the short answer is if we see any significant changes at the site, we're going to be increasing our inspections on that bridge now to every year rather than every 2 years, which is typical for bridges based on the federal requirements. If we see something change there, that might cause us to react. And I think, again, the comments earlier from the community, I've talked to parks. What I understand is that relative to the Lake Samish Park and this bridge, traffic is a nightmare right now before we go out and do anything out there. So clearly, what we're talking about installing out there is not going to probably make that any better. But we would watch that, and I think if conditions changed and it warranted a response from Public Works, then we would be, we'd be a party at the table looking at that.
And I think, it's, John Hutchings speaking, and I think the other part of your question is focused around the decision point regarding whether we go after a long-term solution for this problem, that is a bridge replacement, or we look at a shorter-term solution that would be a repair project. And at the point that there's a preliminary design with some costs associated with it, I mean, at this point, we've got some conceptual ideas of what that might look like, but it would be our intention to come back to you and have that conversation about where we go from there. Recognizing, of course, that there are some cost considerations, right? At the point we make the repair, those are sunk costs that we won't get back out of that facility, that asset again, and that it will likely have some impact on our competitiveness for those bridge replacement funds. Because the bridge will no longer be functionally deficient, and there's a whole engineering conversation to be had around that. Probably longer than we want to engage in this evening, but certainly something that you all ought to have an opportunity to contemplate. So you have my commitment. We'll bring that conversation back to you before we move too far down the road in design. And
Mr. Mann.
So I'm not trying to be a pest here. So, but it's functionally, what was the term? Deficient.
Functionally deficient, and I better get James back up before you ask any more questions about that.
So okay, so the bridge is functionally.
I meant structurally, didn't I, James?
It's structurally deficient. So the baseline, the last couple calls for BRAC funds, the minimum requirements that your bridge had to meet to even apply was you had to have a sufficiency rating less than 40, and the bridge had to be considered structurally deficient.
So is the worry that we would repair it and then be above 40 and then not be, it'd be too good of a bridge? It wouldn't be eligible for funds anymore?
That is a part of the conversation. So what would be wrong with just leaving it as repaired?
Well, if it's not structurally deficient anymore, why do we even need the BRAC funds? Let's just leave it, let's just repair it and call it good.
Well, you could do that repair. I think one of the concerns from our perspective is that bridge has been in service for 53 years. It's a timber bridge in a very wet environment. We're seeing signs throughout the structure that we're nearing the end of the service life of this bridge.
And that's why it was on the list anyway, because...
Yeah, that's why even before this load restriction issue happened, this is a bridge project that's been on the 6-year for a handful of years. Correct.
I see. So we wanted a new bridge anyway. Then we had this sort of emergency situation crop up. If we fix the emergency situation, then our bridge isn't as bad as it was before, and it's not as eligible for replacement. Now I understand. That's a funny world we live in. Okay. Now I get it.
I was
Mr. Donovan.
For the cost of repairing this building, we could do 136 of these bridges.
I don't doubt that.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so.
Sorry.
That was very depressing.
Mr. Brown?
What is the estimated cost to replace the whole thing?
Haven't even really thought about that. I think if we compared it to the Potter Road Bridge, which is a project we have under construction now, you'd probably be looking at somewhere in the $5 to $7 million range.
So put another way, if we repair it, we're at risk of losing a source of funding equal to about $5 or $7 million.
Yeah, and I will add, we have had some conversations with the state's bridge engineering program and the feds trying to get some clarity on this issue of how do you treat a repair like this when it comes to adjusting the sufficiency rating and that structurally deficient classification. You know, it's an area that when you talk to people, you start to pick up pretty quickly that it's a bit of a gray area and there's some confusion there. So it is something that we're still pushing to get some clarity on. And if we get some good news on that, that's something that I think we would definitely be, news we would be bringing back to you folks.
Sorry, one more question.
Mr. Mann?
So when we get BRAC funding, what percentage do we normally have to put in for that?
It's typically an 80-20 split, 80% federal funds, 20% local match. There are, like, seismic retrofits, there are certain types of projects that can potentially be 100% funded. But typically, it's for replacement, it's 80-20.
So if it's a $7 million bridge at 20% our dime, then we're in it for $1.4 million.
In that ballpark, yeah.
Mr. Brown?
And if we just repair it now, what do you think the likely remaining service life of the bridge is?
You know, it'd be hard to say. It's a timber bridge. They tend to, you know, they don't tend to fail as catastrophically as some other bridge types. You know, I'd be guessing. I think, you know, the key there is that we wanted, as I mentioned earlier, increase our inspection frequency on it, make sure we're keeping a good eye on it. If there's any changes to the structure, then we would respond accordingly.
But 10 years, 20 years, 30 years?
Doesn't sound like there's any guarantees.
Yeah, I think that's in my mind, a very valid question that should be answered. I'm not sure we're prepared to answer that before we have, pardon the pun, dug into this a little bit further.
I mean, if we spend...
In terms of solutions.
Yeah, because if I'm doing the math correctly, we'd spend 150 to do the pre-engineering before we could go for the BRAC funds, and versus 250 to replace the centre section. And if we get the BRAC funds, we spend 1.4 million of our money. But if we don't spend the BRAC funds, if we do the repair in the middle, we may defer any further expenditure for, 20 years?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to answer that question at this point, because if I did, I would get it wrong, right?
No, I mean, that's the question that's coming up in my mind.
Yeah.
I understand you can't give me the exact answer.
Yeah, and I think those are fair, and I think you should, we should be prepared to answer those questions when we come forward with these alternatives. In the meantime, however, we do have a bridge out there that now is structurally deficient, doesn't meet federal standards. Therefore, we have some serious public safety concerns associated with it, and we have got to act
So
in
no
the
matter
short term.
what we do, we have to load limit the bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to...
Ms. Brenner was first.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A couple of things. I can't even imagine that you're going to ever come to us and say, oh, this is your guarantee, it'll be this long. I mean, to me, especially a timber bridge, I just...
We'll never guarantee it.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure.
We can still have...
Guesstimates. Yeah. Okay, there was this other question related to the signage up at the freeway. Would it, I mean, I don't know what we are allowed and not allowed to do, but would there not only be signage about saying load constricted, but also giving people directions before they come down onto it? about another way to go. I mean, it's kind of great to tell somebody when they're already in the middle of turning off. And,
Yeah, I think our intention would be to direct traffic, weight-limited trucks to the appropriate exit
Okay.
and the appropriate direction. Now, exactly how we do that with the Department of Transportation and given the road system layout and all that business, I can't speak to that today, but certainly that is our desire.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is you can tell somebody ahead of time, but if it's not far enough ahead of time, they're already stuck, like one of them was mentioning, on the road, so, okay.
Mr. Mann.
So back to the timeline. When do we decide, or when will you bring this back to us to choose a path of either replacing the bridge and pursuing that option and waiting till 2018 to apply versus just repairing it as soon as we can?
Well, one thing is for certain, we have our capital program, our 6-year capital plan and annual construction program will be reconsidered later this year, right in the fall, and certainly we'll have to have a decision at that point because we'll be before you to talk about how we're going to finance those sorts of things. The other consideration is that the engineers are going to need time to develop these preliminary designs, and that involves consultants and structural engineers and the whole 9 yards. So it's not 2 months out. It's more like 6 months out, but it needs to happen before a capital program comes forward. Yeah, this is a big deal. I think it's fair that you're looking for more information on the question of where we put our money with respect to the solution, and I think we're very sensitive to that.
Mr. Sidhu.
Have we looked at on the road, like how much money we need to spend on the road where we will divert the trucks? If that is close to the edge of the lake, and maybe spending some money there and making that road passable, at least we have a solution for the large trucks, heavy trucks, and use the bridge only for car traffic. I think it can stand the car traffic or a fire truck. That would be probably the maximum that has to cross that bridge, but restrict completely all the truck traffic to the other road and repair the road.
I think that's along the lines of the intent. I don't know exactly how that plays out at this point, but yes.
What are the wishes of the council for the ordinance?
I move that we approve the substitute proposal provided by Don Goodman.
Second, if that needs it.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion on the issue? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Okay, next is open session. During open session, audience members will have up to 3 minutes to address the council on any issue relative to county business. Audience members who wish to address the council during a public hearing, during open session, audience members can speak to the council on any issue not scheduled for a public hearing or related to the proposed Gateway Pacific Terminal. So we're back to those rules again. 2 weeks ago, we had an open public hearing on the preliminary hearing on the comp plan, so we had a lot of folks on both sides, and we allowed some of that testimony. But in order to preserve our quasi-judicial status, we're back to please don't talk about Gateway Pacific Terminal. Okay, Max.
Max Perry, Whatcom County. I just want to, we were here for the Natural Resources Committee, and I just want to give a couple of applauds, kudos to some of you members that were really common sense in taking gravel out of the Nooksack. And if you've ever flown a plane, Rud, you fly, but go over the delta to the Nooksack Delta, and it's filled in with so much gravel down there that the lummies can't even take their boats up the river like they normally do. They have to find a channel to go up through on it. So it's just, it's washed way out into the delta. And so taking gravel out, it's gravel that's washed down from probably the mountain, clear on down through, and on down through Ferndale, and on down through the river, and ends up in the mouth, and it's just washed way, way, way out, just shallow. So that was one thing, and I think that's great common sense, and I'm just really encouraged with it, that taking gravel out of the river like we used to do, and that would stop the onflow, the onslaught. The second part I had was for the, you were talking about the forestry, and I'm a member of the Forestry Advisory Committee. And first of all, Josh did a great job. He got the essence of what the committee was about and what they were talking about. So he did a great job telling you what the committee was saying and what they were after. But the main thing was working for us. That came out very, very plainly, because there's a lot on the committee that are mills. One Jerry Millman owns a mill up there. The one mill left in the Whatcom County, and quite a few loggers, and so they're concerned with working for us. We've got a lot of forestry in 2/3 of the county that we can't even touch, or very little of it. And once in a while we get in some DNR timber sales on it. But that was the loss of 2,000 acres of timber on the pre-conveyance. That was an issue to us, and as a committee, and a fear. And they can see if they lose more than that, then Millman's Mill will no longer be real viable here either. So then it becomes no mills in Whatcom County. So anyway, just thank you for doing a great job and keeping on it. Thank you.
Wendy Harris. I've been looking at the comp plan chapters generally, and I'm very concerned. This is my second go around, and I've just learned so much more. I know so much more this time than I did the first time, and I'm looking at this and I'm seeing things I probably wouldn't have understood before. I'm very troubled by the fact that there's this huge disconnect between these policies in the comp plan and what's happening in real life. I mean, in real life, we have manure that is being oversprayed on property and leaking from lagoons, and it is contaminating well water. And that's been studied for like 20 years. It's science. I mean, I've been reviewing those studies. Why isn't any of that in the comp plan? Why aren't we reflecting the problems that exist? Because then it makes sense, the policies that come from that. We're in a total denial about everything. And perhaps the biggest denial we have is the fact that we're acting as if we can just keep growing, and it's insane. We are dealing with finite resources. At some point, the city of Bellingham's almost out of land. At some point, the county's going to be out of land. This land and these resources are the most precious things we have. And I can tell you right now, if you don't have clean air, and you don't have clean water, and you don't have good food to eat, jobs aren't going to matter. Money isn't going to matter. I can tell you, as someone who doesn't breathe, I don't have a job anymore. All of that goes away. And we're not really reflecting what's most important. And I'd like to read a quote I got from a magazine that I think really does a good job of summarizing what this disconnect I'm dealing with. Modern humanity operates with a civilization and a set of belief systems optimized within an atypical, stable 10,000-year period and a couple of centuries of cheap energy-driven exponential growth. Both at the psychological and sociological levels, humanity is ill-prepared to deal effectively with the inconsistency with its exponential growth and the finiteness of the planet it calls home. Its cognitive incapacity with the very concept of the exponential only compounds the issue. We are not doing ourselves any favors if we continue going on this way. We really need to be honest. We need to address the realities of what we're dealing with. We need to address the problems that we're facing. Yes, even if it makes certain stakeholders upset, because we have the science there that documents this. One of the things that really disturbed me, that I've learned from being on the CAO is the most polluted water bodies we're dealing with, Drayton Harbor, the Sumas Aquifer and Lake Whatcom, have been the most studied. We know what's wrong and we're not taking care of it. Please, let's act with more reality. Thank you.
This week isn't like 2 weeks ago. Man, this place was packed. I thought you should be charging an entrance fee. It was fantastic. Patrick L.L.C, 4825 Alderson Road, Birch Bay. Now, we have people come up and say, we need more affordable housing. I think this sounds great. We had Amy from Linden come up today, the planner. She's saying, yeah, you know, if we can take and get some more density into Linden, those people are easier and more very cost-effective to service. And that's the truth. First real trip, went with Patricia to England. We spent a week and a half in the city of Huntington. It was ringed by open space. You couldn't build a house out there, they wouldn't let you. In fact, to get to the train, we had to walk through a sheep pasture. We had to watch where we were stepping. Fella in a coffee shop, they don't have good coffee in England, coffee shop invited me to go to a council meeting like this. So, heck, what the heck, I went. And they were struggling with things like growth management. They were getting, yes, you need to be able to get more people into your community. So, here they are, they're ringed by open space. All they got to do is figure out which open space they're going to let the community grow in. It'll be efficient. The rural areas in England are really rural. Here, we just don't get along with our neighbors always. We want to go out and find our own 5 acres and our own Winchester protected, and it costs a lot of money. We need to really look at what those houses cost out there. Yes, we want them to have efficient refrigerators, efficient stoves, efficient everything else. And then they get burdened with taxes. They yell and scream. They don't want to pay those taxes. Tonight, you're struggling figuring out how to get a bridge. Whoops, I'm going to leave that one alone. It might be a bridge too far.
Oh, jeez.
Thanks, Patrick. Would anyone else like to speak to us during open session? Seeing none, we'll close the public open session. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, the Whatcom County Finance and Administrative Services Committee meeting met today. We considered 3 items on the consent agenda. Item 1 was held in committee. Items 2 were put up for a vote and received a vote of 3-0. With a recommendation of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion to accept, to pass items 2 and 3. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Mr. Chair, the next item was a request authorisation for the county executive to enter into an amended lease agreement between Whatcom County and Whatcom Sports and Recreation for the use of the Northwest Soccer Park to include naming rights to recognise a major donor, Phillips 66, and assumption of the adjoining improvements and area leased to the Boys and Girls Club. This was discussed and received a recommendation of 3-0, and I so move with the additional comment of, I think the feeling was appreciation towards Phillips 66 for their generous support of the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay. We have a motion to authorize county executive to enter into this lease agreement. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Mr. Chair, the next item was an ordinance amending the 2016 Whatcom County budget fourth request in the amount of $700,000. This also received a recommendation of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, could we have the roll call, please?
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann.
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the last item for finance was an ordinance amending the initial East Whatcom Regional Resource Centre project budget amendment number 7 to ordinance 2008 to -025 in the amount of $1,050,000. This received a recommendation of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Please, any discussion? Please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann.
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne.
Yes. Mr. Chair, there was no further business from finance.
Okay, next up is council appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. And we have, looks like 2 committees to fill. The first one is Community Network, and there is 1 vacancy, and there is 1 applicant, David Ramirez.
I'll move David Ramirez.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second for David Ramirez. Do we have any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes 7-0. The next committee is the Portage Bay Shellfish Protection District, number 1 vacancy, and the applicant is Fred Luckel. He's the incumbent. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have the executive appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. We're requesting confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Linda Hughes to the Point Roberts Community Advisory Committee. I'd entertain a motion to confirm.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to confirm Linda Hughes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Request confirmation, next item is to request confirmation of the county executive appointment of Ken Larson and Aaron Perzigian. Is that close, Tyler? Okay. To the Developmental Disabilities Board. Do I have a motion to confirm?
So moved.
He did it. And I'll second.
We have a motion and a
We
second.
make it too.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is introduction items. Do we have a motion to accept?
I move we accept 1 through 6. Are the other ones I missed?
Oh, and there's an additional one,
Oh, yeah, we do have an additional one that's in pink.
resolution.
I move we accept items 1 through 7 then.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Committee reports and other items, council member updates. Do we have anything from natural resources?
Continue to review the comp plan this morning, focusing on protection of forestry and mineral resource lands. Good discussion. We'll be making recommendations in a couple of weeks.
Okay. And how about from Public Works and all that other
Oh,
stuff?
yeah. Well, let's do this motion first from Public Works. We had a motion that was recommended 3-0 from Public Works, and even though they said it didn't have to come to council, I believe it does, and it has to be voted by the full council. So this is under presentation by Public Works to go over the alternatives analysis recently completed for the Slater Road / Jordan Creek Fish Passage Project. And we moved to recommend approval for the Public Works Department moving forward with the preparation of plans, specifications, and cost estimates for a full bridge replacement project using full road closure during construction.
That's your committee's motion. Was
Yep,
that a 3-0
passed
vote?
3-0.
Okay. Do we have any discussion?
I think everybody was there.
Okay, no discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Well, you know, I think maybe I'll just say for the record, we had an incredibly informative discussion regarding small unmanned aircraft. Really interesting. And there's a copy at the council office if somebody, I guess they could get it online, or where would they find it if they want? It was a nice color copy. Can they?
Yeah, we can put it online.
Yeah, that would be great. So it'll be online, stay tuned. We did that other one. Oh, we had a very dismal and depressing presentation of Whatcom County Courthouse exterior envelope assessment. And we also had discussions with the county executive on the preliminary jail capital improvement plan and the other preliminary capital improvement plan, which is all the other buildings. And we also had a briefing and discussion on comprehensive plan, chapter 5, utilities. There were very few recommendations on that, so that's one of the most easier chapters we're going to get through. Enjoy it, because they're not going to be like that, the rest of them.
That's the end?
Oh, that's it, thank
Okay.
you.
And planning didn't meet today, so we have nothing from planning. So, other items of business. Ms. Brenner?
Yeah, we're going to be bringing forward, and I don't, Tyler, you're it, because Jack's not here. I'd like to proceed with maybe figuring out how to name a road or something in the Custer area after Loretta Lynn. The woman who gave us, asked us to do this, I think she said she spoke to the executive or told her to talk to us, but this is like a public works issue, and we can't require Public Works or anybody in the administration to do anything.
Yeah, Deputy Executive Tyler Schroeder, Executive Laws has spoken with the individual that you talk about.
Right.
I wasn't aware that she was asking to name a road. I believe that she was discussing about trying to name some different thing in Custer after Miss Loretta Lynn. We can follow up with her specifically to
Please.
the road and give some background, but we have been having conversations with her.
I think it was a road, wasn't it, Carl? Or
I think it was something.
something.
Yeah, I heard something.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll follow up and have some
Great,
input.
because I don't know what we can, it's totally a Public Works issue.
Do we have any other items? Council member updates. Start with Mr. Weimer. Mr. Mann.
So I am your representative to the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, and it is it's a strong group, large group. Everyone's participating really well, and as you may remember, we have a report due, our Phase 1 report, and we will be presenting it, or I should say, our chair and our facilitator will be presenting the draft, actually, no, the final Phase 1 report at our next meeting in the Public Works Committee. So I would recommend everyone be there who cares about this issue. I know we all do, so I just wanted to give you a heads up and give the public a heads up too. At our next Public Works Committee, you'll be hearing from the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force.
Thank you. Councilmember
Can
Mann.
I ask him a
Mr. Brown?
question?
Nothing.
I just have a question. Do you
Sure.
want to talk about the facilitation part?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I have nothing. Ms. Brenner?
No.
Mr. Donovan? Mr. Sidhu? Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned.